Hey folks, recently I've completed a huge stack of notes for an extensive study on the criminally underrated horror movie Amityville 2: The Possession. But to start with here, I've decided to post a teaser in the form of an individual scene analysis. My scene of choice for this study is the long and creepy scene in which lead character Sunny is pursued and possessed by a spiritual force. This scene has inventive camera work, great music, and some sneaky bits of subliminal trickery that keep the viewer hooked even though there's hardly a word spoken. But first, a few words for those of you who are not familiar with this movie or who had mistakenly written it off. Amityville 2 is a marvellous horror film, popular with audiences but disliked by critics because of the multiple difficult subject matters it explores. Some have mistakenly just assumed the film to be an Exorcist rip-off, but I'll save my arguments against that for my much longer full analysis, which will be posted in the near future. So subscribe and turn on the notification bell, otherwise you might miss the more in-depth study when I release it. And another issue that some of you may be tempted to bring up in the comments section is to point out how the film doesn't accurately reflect the real-world Amityville murder case and its surrounding events. I agree, it doesn't, but it was never meant to be that in the first place. That's why the names and events are drastically changed. This is a film review, not a review of the real-life Amityville murder case, though I will be covering that issue in my larger study of the film further down the line. The longer video will also cover the film's themes of family violence, sibling abuse, religious elements, and plenty more. Okay, so the reasons I've chosen this scene for initial study is because first, it's one of the most engaging and carefully constructed scenes in the whole movie, and second, because the scene contains hardly any dialogue and it happens in the first third of the movie. So a study of this scene won't give away too many plot spoilers for those of you that haven't seen the whole film. And by the way, if you haven't seen the film and are intending to, then I recommend that you do not read any reviews of the film and do not read up about the case that the film is based on. The less you know about it, the more you'll enjoy the film's surprise twists, some of which are real shockers. So the basic non-spoiler story setup is this. A family of 6 have moved into a house in which some sort of evil forces begin messing with their lives. The eldest child of the family, Sonny, is a young man whose bedroom is on the top floor. And one night, when all the rest of the family have gone out and he is all alone in the big house, he is slowly pursued and eventually possessed by a spiritual force of evil. The whole scene lasts approximately 9 minutes, that's quite long, but it's very creepy and engaging. It slowly builds up tension, gradually adding layers of subliminal detail and psychological camera work, and yet the whole scene never shows us exactly what is attacking Sonny. In fact, that mystery is a major part of what makes it so engaging. So let's take it from the top. After an exterior shot of the family getting into their car and driving off, we pan up to the supernatural light of the attic bedroom windows. As we can see from inside the room, the windows should be a lot darker. This supernatural lighting is a more subtle form of the subliminal face appearance of the house front in the film's poster, with extremely bright-eyed windows. Also, when the camera pans up, music starts, consisting of nursery melody strings and the chorus of children singing. It's a horror film trope to have this kind of music before horrific events happen, and I think the fundamental metaphor is to establish a moment of blissful, childlike innocence that is about to be destroyed by the forthcoming horror. In this case, Sonny, much like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, is neither boy nor man. He is physically an adult, but emotionally he is still a boy on account of still living with his parents and therefore still under the psychological control of his dominant father. In this 9-minute scene, this boy will have his innocence destroyed by an attack from evil forces. Hence the innocent music changes the moment the lights are supernaturally switched off in his room. But even before the music changes, there's already something else going on that's slightly odd. When we cut to Sonny inside the house, he's watching the rest of the family leave, like he was waiting for them to leave. He knew in a previous scene that they were going to church, and when invited he ran up to his room to avoid going. After seeing them leave, there's an easy to miss detail. He picks up what appears to be a rollie or maybe even a joint. His dad has already chastised him about smoking cigarettes.
You're gonna be a man by smoking cigarettes, now you're growing a little fuzz over here?
But if he's a cigarette smoker, then he doesn't need rollies, so perhaps this is a joint he's been slyly smoking. Understandable that he might want to make sure the family have gone out before he can relax and enjoy a little escapist chill-out session. But another interesting thing about this is that If he's a little bit high, then he would be particularly susceptible to paranoia during the supernatural attack that's about to happen. As he's about to have a smoke, the lights go out and he hears a door creak and slam somewhere outside, and it sounds like the door slam is on the same floor. Sounds like it could be his sister's bedroom door, which is on the same floor, but she's just gone out. And of course it can't be a family member at all because they all just went out. The lights are apparently off here, but when Sonny steps forward, he's lit from our left. I mention it because the light sources frequently change and mismatch each other throughout the whole scene. On the one hand, this is because to have the house lights completely switched off for the entire scene, the entire 9-minute scene, this would leave everything so dark that we wouldn't even be able to see Sonny. But on the other hand, it's just been reinforced that the spiritual forces of the house can mess with the lights, switching them on and off. They can also make the light sources change colour, but we'll come to that later. So to begin with here, we're going to be exploring lighting for a few minutes because initially it's the primary subliminal tool used in this scene, and we'll get into other directorial techniques as we get further in. Sonny goes out into the hall and all the upstairs lights are out, but he is lit from within his bedroom as if a strong light source in there has just switched itself back on. It's also difficult to tell from what angles the light from the floor below are coming from. One light source to the lower right casting banister shadows on Sonny, and another light source on the lower left casting banister shadows on the right wall here. These banister shadows will frequently change during the scene, and the actual light sources are virtually never shown. It's like the moon is somehow lighting the house from various angles inside. Sonny calls out,
Who's there?
I don't know who you is supposed to be, but the spiritual force responds by making deliberate footstep noises, luring Sonny into investigating. Then he grabs a hammer for protection. Note that we've just had a 15-second shot before cut to this wide shot. The whole sequence will repeatedly use long, unbroken camera shots, which is good for maintaining audience immersion. Too many camera cuts feels unnatural. Note the very low camera angle here too. Unusual camera angles are of monumental importance in this scene, and they will get more and more bizarre. Regarding the tall shadows from the banisters, I think the reason they are a common feature in Gothic type horror is twofold. First, the long shadow stripes, which are often disjointed when they're cast across disjointed wall features. This creates a discomforting visual pattern. A lot of discomforting optical illusions use broken parallel stripes. Note the striped wallpaper in the background here at an odd angle, and the diagonal beams of the roof structure too. There are loads of examples of these disjointed parallel shadows throughout the scene, and we'll come to more of them shortly. And second, I think tall vertical banister stripes are psychologically effective because they have the appearance of prison bars, or even the bars of a baby's crib. I mean, most of us have subconscious memories of that, don't we? Now, it isn't apparent yet, but it soon will be. All of the camera shots in this scene carry some sort of implication that we are seeing Sonny through the eyes of whatever evil force is targeting him, so keep that in mind. Next shot, and we already have a mismatch of lighting sources between shots. As Sonny went down the stairs, the light from below was casting his shadow upward, but now his shadow is being cast downward. In other words, the lights that were shining up the stairs here have gone off, leaving this floor mostly in darkness now. And now a new light source from upstairs and to our left is shining downward, casting shadows from the upstairs banister instead onto the right wall. And look at all those very tall prison bar shadows filling the wall in the foreground on our right, but those stripes also uncomfortably broken by the woodwork. And a little picture of an isolated country house is visible too. There are lots of examples in this film of seemingly incidental picture props being used thematically, though this one does seem rather innocent compared to some of the other examples, such as this.
Hello, Sonny.
The use of externally lit curtains and window nets is important in this scene as well. Upstairs here, the distant window is lit from an external light source to our left. Cut to next floor down and the curtains are partially drawn, making for a creepy dark area, but we can see that the light from the window now comes from an external light source to our right, hence the lampshade is lit from that source. Exterior left light source here changes to exterior right light source here. Sonny calls out again, and this time something or someone throws a suitcase out of a doorway on the left.
Jan?
The suitcase specifically hits that daytime country house picture. Interesting. The fact that it's a suitcase that's thrown as well, this seems appropriate because the ghosts of the house, they want the family out of there, they want them to leave. Sonny can see that the door where the suitcase came from is open and it's very dark in there, and I'm pretty sure that's the door to his parents' bedroom. Note that Sonny is lit from a low light source here coming from the stairwell to the left, but we cut to that stairwell with a flipped angle and there's no light source on that stairwell at all. Now Sonny is lit from a light source near the stairwell that he first came down, but that area was dark in this shot. And I don't know what's going on with the shadows now. We've got stair banister striped shadows, but also some larger crisscross shadows that make no sense. Down Sonny goes, keeping same continuous shot. One shot per floor it seems. It would have been nice to have it all continuous, but that wouldn't allow for all the changes of light sources and the jarring mismatches of shadow play. He's looking around everywhere here because an attack could come from any direction, being that there's rooms and doorways in all directions in these halls. Here on the ground floor we have two more strange light sources, one coming from around each corner at the end of the hall. The clock casting its shadow to the right on account of a light shining through the left side doorway, but the Christian cross pictures and other furniture here are lit from a light source around the right corner there, and yet that same light source isn't shining onto the clock. So it's clearly a directional light that's hidden around that corner. Oh, by the way, the curtains on both floors in this shot appear to be blood red. Another supernatural noise is heard, causing Sonny to panic and head to the basement. Now, you know how in so many horror movies the characters stupidly go wandering into dangerous places no matter how many signs of danger are thrown at them? Well, here they have given the character a bit of justification that makes sense. He's on his way to the basement to get one of his father's rifles. Of course, if you think there's an intruder, get the best weapon you can. And so it's good that the rifles are right down in the basement and his bedroom is up at the top of the building, so it gives an excuse that he's going to go wandering around the house in order to get to the rifles. Right, so cut to the basement scene. Before Sonny switches on a light, we can see that there are windows on two walls and those windows are letting in some light. Well, guess what? In the original floor plans of the real Amityville house basement, there was definitely no window on the left wall here. As we can see from the blueprints, there was another room behind that wall. And as for the window to the wall on our right, that couldn't exist because in both the film and the original house, there was a wide set of steps leading to the front door, and therefore those would overlap any windows here. So spatial liberties have been taken here to get faintly lit windows into the set, and yes, all of the interior sets of the film are studio constructed. Even the exterior is a mock-up and is not the original real-life Amityville house. Why do the windows matter here, you may ask? Because, as already noted, the top windows of the house are used in the film and marketing poster as a set of symbolic eyes, as if the end of the house is a subliminal evil face of the spiritual forces inside. In the same manner, but less obvious, windows throughout this scene on all floors, lit from outside, are like watching eyes too, especially here in the basement, and we'll come back to that subject of these windows in a minute. Another piece of lighting trickery is that early in the film there was a basement scene and the room was lit more fully by daylight coming through the windows, but also more basement lights were present, highlighting the characters more. But here, Sonny switches on the lights, and there are only two dim wall lights that turn on. One in the background on the right here, and another near the underneath of the stairs lighting the guns. That's not much light at all. So, it makes this basement darker for this scene than it's supposed to be. The father of the family has left all his guns plus ammunition out in the open, even though there's young kids in the house who might mess with them and accidentally kill someone. I don't think of that as bad script writing, being that it adds to the notion of the father being very irresponsible. And we already know from other scenes in this story that he's abusive, so this makes sense. And we can now see that there's an extra lit window impossibly placed in the corner under the stairs. The big lounge room would be right above that and beyond, so there's no way we could see outside there. Now the music calms down so that we and Sonny can hear some ghostly chatter being whispered from the cupboard area. Note that Sonny's face is kept in shadow here in this specific part of the room, and that will change in a few shots. If we turn up the volume, the overlapped chatter doesn't seem to involve a single recognisable word, so it's like another language. But the voices mostly sound female to me. And there are also some groans mixed in with all this. Groans of pain or pleasure, it's hard to tell which. Also present in the sound is fast heavy breathing from actor Jack Magner, who plays Sonny. His character is getting more and more scared even though he has a gun. There are also sounds of someone either laughing or crying, it's hard to tell which.
Come on out.
I like the vagueness of that. It sounds like the ramblings we might hear in a lunatic asylum. Sonny opens the hatch now, and look at the sudden change in the basement lighting. All the lights are now on. The extra light gives conscious justification to the fact that we can see Sonny so clearly as he enters the crawl space. But actually there's a mysterious light directly above and inside the crawl space as he walks in. And then another one up to the left as he moves forward, this one lighting a cobweb. And then a third one as he approaches a second set of pillars. 3 unnatural light sources within this crawl space. The music becomes a lot more ominous as Sonny enters here because this is a particularly evil place. The way I see it, this dungeon-like crawl space is symbolically another dimension, equivalent to hell. It certainly stretches out beyond the exterior boundary of the house. What follows supports this, and it's one of the film's best creepy moments. And again, involving wise use of lighting. Sonny sees something in the wall, and he's shaken by it, and we can't tell what it is until it moves, slowly revealing the shape of a human hand. Basically, it seems to represent human souls trapped within the foundations of the house itself, the house serving as a kind of gateway to hell anyway. Now, they did have this basement as a gateway to hell element in the first movie, but it was done in a much more cliched and crude way. Here it's a little bit more subtle. You know, if you're not paying attention in terms of symbolism, you could just say, oh, it's just a crawl space under the house. By the way, this was another of the scene's very long unedited shots, this one lasting about 40 seconds. Sonny runs out and looks back in, and the hand is gone, suggesting that he might have just had some stoned hallucination or something. But look at all the mysterious lighting, sourced from off-screen to the left and right, and with a magical glow. Very nice. And as was the case in an earlier scene in this crawl space, there is no confirmation of how deep the space goes. Here it just fades off to a blackness that could be infinite. Close-up of Sonny, and Jack Magner's important acting is starting to really kick in. Now, he's not just breathing heavy, but he's sweating too, and both of these are typically effective in horror acting. But Magner, who had only this one major acting role and could have become a bigger star on the strength of it, he discontinued his acting career shortly after. Reports claim that he quit because he wanted to raise a family. Good for him, of course. But this film showed that he had a very relatable screen presence and a wide range of acting skills. And he gets to play the innocent all-American kid. And later on, well, go watch the movie and you'll see the expansion of his acting into other areas. From here, at this moment, Magner's acting becomes an essential ingredient for the success of this entire sequence. He has no more dialogue during the scene, so it's all done through expressions, breathing, sweating, and so on. Not easy to carry such a long scene convincingly, but he pulls it off. So anyway, Sonny chills a moment here and probably thinks he was just hallucinating or stoned. And now we get the first shot that is clearly intended to be the viewpoint of whatever spiritual force wants to attack him, and it's coming directly from that darkness that we saw a minute ago. A switch to shaky handheld camera movement makes it clear that this is a point-of-view shot of some sort of entity, along with a musical switch to heavy strings courtesy of the fabulous composer Lalo Schifrin. He was no lightweight composer, go look him up. His musical track record is incredible and it includes themes that you've heard many times before. In fact, he even did a score for The Exorcist, which was too scary for audiences, and so his score was rejected and another one was used. If you want to know how good his score for The Exorcist is, go and check out the trailer for The Exorcist, the one with all the freaky light show effects of the demon character's face. and listen to the horrifying music. It's brilliant. So yeah, he did the score for Amityville 2. The spiritual force emerging from this crawl space is like a demon emerging from the bowels of hell into the realm of the living. As the camera comes forward, we can see that the crawl space wraps right around to the left, further confirming that the window to the outside world that we see under the stairs is impossible. We can tell it goes right round the back of there because there's a large white board of some kind propped up against the wall. Before this force reaches Sonny, we have another spatial impossibility. The stairway on the right leads up to an outside set of doors to the garden, but that's not possible because the dining room and kitchen would be there. By the way, I'm pretty sure these basement set impossibilities were present in the first Amityville movie and have been ported over to the sequel for continuity, but regardless, they have a subliminal spatial confusion effect anyway. I mean, there was a lot of subliminal stuff in the first movie, although I don't really rate the first movie that well. I think its script is too messy, but it does have some good subliminal stuff, which seems to include this bizarre basement set layout, mismatching the rest of the house. Now Sonny is touching and leaning on parts of the house foundation, as people sometimes do when they're trying to get a grip on reality, as they say. But that grip doesn't last long. He senses the presence behind him and turns to face it. A few interesting things going on here, details. Sonny being positioned directly below a light bulb, this lights his face in a manner that darkens his eye sockets. Jack Magner had a slightly bony facial structure with quite heavy eyebrows, so it gives him the appearance of a deathly skull. And what I like about that is that we can't see the demon or the spiritual force, whatever it is, so instead we get an impression of death in how actor Jack Magner is lit. This kind of dark eye socket spotlighting is done in lots of horror movies, well, not just horror, it's done in other movies as well, but I think it's especially good in this mysterious context. Another detail here, which I've referred to earlier, is the exterior lit windows possibly representing eyes, like in the movie poster. Here we have a pair of them, right behind Sonny, a pair of eyes, and another pair on the wall to the left. So it's like there's large pairs of eyes looking at him from different directions. This was another long shot, by the way, almost 30 seconds with no cuts. The bursting of the pipes is good. We can neither see nor hear the evil force directly, so its appearance and voice have to be implied. The sudden hiss of the pipes appears to be a metaphor of the evil spirit itself, hissing at Sonny. So up he runs back into this hall. A couple of continuity errors that I don't think were intended, but who knows. The upstairs is well lit here, but once he's up there, it's much darker. And the red curtains that were hanging straight here, now they're joined in the middle near the top. Yeah, I think those are just continuity errors. Okay, so we're almost halfway through the entire scene at the moment. It's a long scene, but with all these tricks of lighting, camera work, set design, Lalo Schifrin's musical score, and Jack Magner's non-verbal acting, it has managed to keep up the tension for 4.5 minutes. Not only is it going to keep up the engagement for another 4.5 minutes, but it's going to raise the anxiety level with some new tricks. First of all, I like the creepily lit stair banister post out of focus on our right here. Looks kind of ghostly. And second, the music goes silent for about 15 seconds. Why? So that we can hear two things. First, the ticking of a clock, not too loud, just loud enough to have a subliminal effect. And ticking clocks are frequent in this film. I think their purpose is akin to a ticking time bomb waiting to go off, a countdown toward the inevitable horrors awaiting the family. In this scene, it's part of the countdown to Sonny being overtaken by an evil force. The second sound detail here is a very faint male laugh heard from the lounge. Low enough that not everyone who watches the film will consciously notice it. So I'll play it here with the volume turned right up. By the way, there's a few more examples of what may be subliminal pairs of eyes in this shot. Again, along the lines of what we see of the attic eyes in the poster. Look at the pair of framed pictures on the far wall on either side of the clock. Then another pair of framed pictures on either side of the Christian cross. And then the pair of pictures on either side of the window behind Sonny in the dining room with red curtains between them. The lighting seems to be arranged to make sure that we can see all that. It's very reminiscent of a big face, isn't it? You know, along the lines of the movie poster. And look at the jagged shadows of the chairs on the wall lit by some very low light source. Nicely gothic. At no point does this scene show us what attacks Sonny, so I think it was important for visual implications to be made regarding what we can't see. Jack positioning himself with his back directly to that giant subliminal face I think is important, because now we cut to a shot from behind him, and it's a demonic point of view, or ghost point of view. It's like we have switched to the viewpoint of that subliminal face. The camera shot we get here is now one of the absolute best I've ever seen in any movie in terms of movement. This is really impressive. Starting at Sonny's feet, rising to tower over him, continuing until it's in front of him and upside down, then swinging back and forth like a monkey hanging from a tree branch, and as if that wasn't enough, a full 180-degree return to an upright position. All of this done with no cuts to any other shots, all one continuous shot. Incredible. I have never seen a shot like that in any other movie. I'm not even sure what kind of equipment would have been used to do this, and we're talking big heavy film reel cameras, not some lightweight digital equipment. And also any technical crew and equipment positioned behind the camera here at the beginning of the shot, all of that and all the people would have to get out of the way for when the shot ends up facing the opposite direction on itself. I wonder how many takes it took to get this right. Probably lots. A possible clue to the difficulty of the shot, and which oddly adds to its creepiness, is that there are two details that can either be taken as subliminal or as simply filming mistakes. Look at the white lampshade. Someone's shadow moves over it and across the wall on the right. Clearly a human figure moved somewhere over there on the left and out of shot. And then pay attention left screen and you'll see someone stood against the wall with yellow trousers and black shoes. Now it is tempting to say, oh look, the filmmakers are being clever by having a moving shadow and a pair of human legs placed subliminally to mess with our heads. I don't think that's the case though. What I think has happened is that some crew members were stood behind the camera here doing whatever they needed to do, and as the camera passed over Jack Magner's head, they ran down this hall and around the back of the stairs to the lounge area, and then quickly made their way across this wall to the left, so that they could carry out some other technical task once the camera had flipped its position. Maybe they showed up so that they could rotate the camera. It could even be the director standing there, and I think there's a second pair of feet there too. If this were an intended subliminal detail, then yellow trousers wouldn't be appropriate for the shot. It just looks like someone is wearing overalls, you know, like what you might get on a film set. Naked feet or even devil hooves would have been a better subliminal choice if that was the intention. But the one detail that screams mistake is that the person in the yellow boots suddenly shifts their feet back as if suddenly realising that they have stepped into the shot. So I put my money on that being a mistake, but isn't it lucky that these two details fit so well with the unseen spiritual threat presence? The same presence that was heard laughing in this very room in the previous camera shot. Based on that, I think it's still possible that the shadow moving over the lamp was deliberate, but for the feet on the left, I really don't think so. Schifrin's musical composition helps to draw out every bit of the shot too, starting with intermittent string threats combined with that ticking clock getting louder. And shifting to panic mode as the monster point of view gets right in front of Sonny and then coils itself into a face-on threat. Sonny looking right into the camera is great too. It's like he can and can't see that there's something there. Even if you hate this film, even if you think it's a rip-off of The Exorcist, which it clearly isn't if you pay attention to this whole scene and some other scenes that are just as powerful, you've still got to admit that this is an outstanding piece of camera movement. It's as good as any other shot in any other horror film I've seen, including The Thing, The Shining, The Exorcist, whatever. I'd put this shot in my top 10 movie shots of all time, despite the foot intrusion error, which virtually no one would notice unless they're writing a detailed study of the scene. Anyway, let's move on. Sonny now thinks the stalking presence is gone and he's about to go back upstairs, and a light source up the stairs is shining directly at him, casting a shadow on the lower left here. but cut to a shot following him and there's no light source up there. Plenty more going on in this shot too. More tall banister shadows on the walls, but not the same as they were on this same wall when he came downstairs. Another change is that when he came downstairs, the curtains were completely still because the windows were closed. But now someone has opened the windows and the wind is blowing the curtains and nets about. So I don't think that's a mistake. It's a continuity error, but I do think that is a thematically intended one. Sonny can now at least definitely sense the evil presence, maybe see it, maybe not. The fact that he's not trying to shoot at it suggests that he can't actually see it. A slightly sinister black and white picture prop shows a tower of some kind, possibly a lighthouse, stood right on the edge of a cliff. Seems in keeping with Sonny's isolation and sense of danger here. Remember, this is a studio set shoot, so all props have been chosen for the set, they're not incidental. This continuous shot up 2 flights of stairs doesn't allow for as much shadow trickery as we got earlier between shots, but the emphasis is now on Sonny and the monster's point of view. Sonny scrambles backward up the next set of stairs, a good combination of physical and facial acting. A poor actor could have easily ruined these shots. There's a couple of continuity errors here as well as he gets to the top of the stairs, and I do think these ones really are errors. There's a rug of some kind at the top of the stairs, and a strange shadow on the walls that might well be from some lighting or microphone equipment. Cut to wide shot, and the rug and the weird shadow are gone. However, the lighting has changed also. Now the stair banister shadows are from the floor below, and the light source around the top corner to our right. This illuminates Sonny, and I think that's just to keep him more visible in the shot. The vertically striped wallpaper with strange shadow formations from tilted wall angles here is really good, and the monster towering or floating above Sonny is important. It's a domineering position. Okay, so let's pause a moment for a bit of narrative assessment. Why has the evil force spent nearly 7 minutes playing hide and seek with Sonny? Why is it tormenting him but not showing itself? Why didn't it just attack him right away at the beginning of the whole sequence? Well, I think it's the same motivational framing that's found in the ending of the 2018 horror masterpiece Hereditary. In that film's ending, the demonic force and its worshippers have set an elaborate trap to drive the character targeted for possession into such a heightened state of terror that his will to live is broken. The intense fear makes him vulnerable enough and weak enough for a full spiritual invasion and possession of his body to take place. It's never explained in the film that way, but if you go see my video Greatest Scream Villains, the Paimon Demon in Hereditary, the case for that is made in detail there. A link to my site is in the video description below if you're interested in that video. And I think the same principle is at work in this scene of Amityville 2 The Possession. The evil spirit is tormenting Sonny, breaking down his will, bullying him into submission so that he is vulnerable enough for the spirit or demon to take complete control, to take residence in his flesh. As far as I know, Amityville 2 was the first horror movie to explicitly take this particular approach to spiritual possession. Hereditary was awesome, but regarding that concept, Amityville 2 got there first, over 35 years earlier. Something else that these two films have in common is that neither of them show the demon force directly. Both films imply the demon's presence, and in both cases I think that makes the demon more convincing. Typically when a movie depicts a ghostly presence with on-screen special effects, it spoils the mystery. And that's why movies like The Exorcist, Amityville 2, Exorcism of Emily Rose, and Hereditary tend to only depict the demon through the actions of living human characters. It works in all those cases. But in Hereditary, we did get to see an artist's sketch impression of the Paimon demon, as shown in a book prop. This is good because it's not a traditional, unconvincing special effect, and so it gives us a possible idea of what the demon might look like, but we still have to conjure up our own internal impression of what the monster would look like in the flesh, and being that the audience usually has to do this unconsciously, it tends to be more powerful than actual practical special effects that force a conscious impression of the monster. Amityville 2 uses that exact same approach, but it does it in a way that I think is even more of a psychological trick, because it's harder to make the conscious connection between the crude drawing and the invisible beast. Here it is, and it occurs earlier than the scene that we're studying. As far as I can tell, this is a crude child sketch impression of the demon that possesses Sonny, a giant red devil, serpent, dragon, beast thing. Note the emphasis on its eyes, which have been subliminally implied in the windows of the house in several scenes. To try and show this beast with actual practical special effects on a low budget, well, even with a high budget, when it takes over Sonny, that would probably be laughable. So instead, the seed was planted for us to visualise this for ourselves. Other clues are that in this writing it refers to the children as pigs, and the demon itself will call the family pigs and animals when whispering to Sonny.
Why didn't you shoot that pig? Look at them, the pathetic animals.
And look at the red-eyed, red-tongued drawing of a male face in the kid's bedroom here. I suspect that that's a foreshadow of possessed Sonny's appearance in a key scene later. Right, back to the possession scene breakdown. Jack goes back to his bedroom where the monster wants him to be. He started up there, but it wanted to lure him down into the cellar, show him the dark dimension that it comes from, and then slowly chase him back up to his bedroom, driving up the fear and breaking his spirit. As Sonny moves to the bedroom doorway, look at the strange props over his shoulder. A sign that says, "Here." This was seen sneakily positioned in a mirror earlier in the film when they were moving into the house. The full sign says, "Enter here." So there's that sign again on a far wall. I'm not sure why the sign isn't on the outside of his door. I mean, you can't exactly enter a wall, can you? And it's lit to be readable here in a room that's so dark. But what is that that's covering the top of the sign? Is that a red demon-like figure with yellow eyes? It's hard to tell, but it kind of looks like it. And why is it so well lit, given how dark the room is? We'll get a better view of this in a few seconds. So, Sonny closes the door, and the demon, with its film camera ability to teleport to any point of view at once, instantly materialises behind Sonny and charges right in to stare at the back of his head. Sonny detects it and turns round, and then he moves and positions himself by the window where we can get a much better view of that cartoonish red demon, or whatever the hell it is. Certainly looks like a demon, doesn't it? I think it's actually a lampshade, but the fact that it's so prominently lit and is over his shoulder, it's a very suspicious prop. And some other props of minor interest here. The wireframe model of a ship by the window provides some more jagged, uncomfortable lines like we had with all those stairway banister shadows. And we get the same with the window frame shadows against the neck curtains, jagged, broken lines. And there's a red dartboard that's lit at the bottom of the screen. It seems to be lit as if drawing our attention to it. If there's a thematic intention to that, which there might not be, but if there is, I would say it's something to do with Sonny himself being the target of the demon. A very jarring and disorienting cut now. Sonny fires a shot at the demon camera point of view, and he does this while he's lit from the right. And we cut to a closer shot of him from the same angle, and he hasn't moved, but all the props and even the window appear to be gone. Sonny is still firing, but now he is lit from directly above. It's like the demon has just suddenly transported him to its own dark dimension, placing him directly beneath a supernatural spotlight and placing him alone. It pulls his gun away, and then we cut to a view of Sonny's feet, and he isn't positioned by the window like he was here. Well, we didn't see him move. The demon moves straight up to tower over him like a 10-foot tall beast, and he is still under its supernatural spotlight. And like in the basement, the lighting gives him dark, hollow eye sockets, making him look, kind of like a deathly skull. It backs him up until he falls onto his own bed. That's the same bed that we saw here at the beginning of the entire 9-minute scene. So it starts thrusting first toward his face and then to his belly, trying to gain entrance for full possession. And it plays supernatural light displays as it does so. Reds and blues, it seems. Given that there are prominent sexual elements elsewhere in the story, though I'm not going to give spoilers about them here, this invasion of Sonny plays out a bit like a spiritual rape, if you will. It tears his shirt open to complete the attack. With the garish colour and the clammy, sweaty skin, it almost looks like a fake torso. Sonny collapses and seems to lose consciousness for a moment, and the possession appears to be complete. The scene fades to black as camera moves in, and then pink and green light shines upon him. Pink and green together a very sickly combination of colours. So it's like the possession is an infection. Then the bulges in his flesh begin, like the demon is moving about inside. A decent practical visual effect in a scene that has managed to successfully do without special effects until now. Cut to a more distant shot of Sonny as he sits up, and we can see the window behind him, but given the position of his bed as it was seen at the beginning of the whole sequence, the window is now on the wrong side of the bed and he is laying on it the wrong way around from what we saw here. Simple explanation for that, we're looking at Sonny through a mirror, the same mirror that we saw when he was moving in. And we can see the edge of that mirror here distorting his reflection as he gets up. I like that because it's another example of the spatial disorientation that's used frequently throughout this entire sequence. The high-pitched elements of the score here, that also seems to fit with the notion of shiny reflections. As he steps forward, his face is distorted by the mirror edge up close, and he gets a look at himself in sickly green with demonic inflammations bubbling all over the place. And with that eye symbolising window prominent in the shot too. The music now plays a similar childlike melody as it did when the scene began, but this time with ghostly harmonics. What's this music supposed to imply here? I'm not sure. Is it a mockery of his innocence? Is it an implication that he has been reborn through possession, or that the demon itself has been reborn through him? And so it's kind of like a newborn child or something like that. Backing off, his reflection is distorted again. He lets out a scream of terror. I assume this is Sonny screaming and not the demon, but it could be either. And then the house goes berserk, starting with two doors slamming open and closed. That's his bedroom door and his sister's bedroom door opposite. And through those doors we can see his sister's bed. Now I won't say anything about the significance of that, you'll need to go and watch the rest of the movie to find out about it. The rest of the house is going technically berserk as well, including his parents' bed spinning around. That's another bed that has significance in the full movie. Then we have guns firing off into the ceiling, electrical sparks, fireballs, and a brief but strong external wind. This is all symbolic, of course, the spiritual forces celebrating their victory over Sonny, who they can now use as their pawn to commit evil acts amongst the living. Now, I'm not sure about the red bicycle here. It was shown in one other exterior shot, but it doesn't seem to mean anything obvious. But for some reason, the camera emphasises it here. Then the house lights go out and fade to blackness and silence, and that's the end of this chapter in the story. So, a very good horror scene, a classic horror scene in my opinion. 9 minutes of almost totally non-verbal storytelling and sensory communication. But it doesn't feel slow because it's constantly playing with us via camera trickery, lighting trickery, props, music and sound effects. They pack tons of stuff into this scene. And of course the engaging screen presence of Jack Magnet, who is excellent throughout this film as both innocent youth and demonically possessed with all the shades in between. Unbelievably, he wasn't even credited on the poster of the film, even though he is the central character, or at least he has the most screen time, and as far as I can tell, that seems to be the primary factor that determines who is the lead character of a movie. So here's the actual film poster, and here's my redesign. There, that's better. So Jack Magnet, if you're still out there and you get to watch this video, sit back and have a celebratory drink for a job well done. Respect. As for everyone else, if you haven't seen this film, I highly recommend you do. And remember, don't spoil it for yourself by reading reviews or reading about the real case. If you have seen the film and forgot about it or wrote it off, then go back and give it a rewatch, and this time pay attention. The film does have its flaws, but hey, so does The Exorcist, which is brilliant in its first 2 acts, but for me loses some of its magic and subtlety in the final exorcism showdown. Amityville 2 isn't a better film than The Exorcist, but it definitely holds its own, and not just on account of this great 9-minute sequence. In fact, this isn't even my favourite scene of the film. There's loads of other stuff to explore, including some family dynamic psychology that a lot of the critics didn't want to deal with, and which hardly any other films have dealt with since. So go get a copy, folks. Don't forget, I will be making a much bigger study of the film, or maybe I'll break it up into several videos, I'm not sure yet, but my notes are ready. So if you're new to my work, subscribe and click the notification bell so that you find out when I've got new videos. or bookmark my website collativelearning.com and check in regularly, or follow me on Facebook or Twitter. If you don't do any of those things, then you might miss out on the full analysis of the movie when I post it. You can also support me on Patreon to access more material, and you can order a ton of extra film analysis videos on my website. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there that isn't available on YouTube. And the links to all of those are in the video description. Thanks for watching. You've been listening to Rob Ager of CollativeLearning.com. Stay free.